Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Twin Theory, a podcast about innovation in healthcare produced by the Virtual Physiological Human Institute. My name is Davide Montesarchio, and today we will have a peek at what happens behind the computer screen. We will discover what knowledge-based models are, how they are made, and how they help deliver more efficient and better healthcare. Joining us today is a distinguished guest, Himanshu Kaul, a Royal Academy of Engineering Research Fellow and Principal Investigator at the Laboratory for Multiscale Emergent Bioengineering at the University of Leicester. Good morning, Cole.
Good morning. Well, thanks for this opportunity, David. It's exciting to join this journey about digital twin podcasts.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to ask you, what is a computer model? And are there any examples of how computer models are applied, for instance, in our everyday life?
Absolutely. So a computer model is a representation of the real world in a very simpler manner on a computer. And for example, a simple computer model could be you doing your predictions about how your bank account is going to last for an entire month. So you go on your Excel spreadsheets, you figure out, what's the incoming, what's the outgoings. So you make a predictions that, if I spend these and this is how much time it'll take for me to get to the end of the month. A more complex example is when you may have an aeroplane and a company that's trying to design what an aircraft would look like, what the flow field around that aircraft would look like while it's in midair carrying thousands of passengers. And a computer model allows us to study the detailed design aspects much more cheaply, much more rapidly, and much more safely, more importantly. An excellent example of a good computer model, it's if you know Tour de France, the cyclists have these cars that basically follow them. And there was a couple of Dutch engineers who did this analysis. They created a computer model of the cyclists with the cars behind them. And then they figured out that the flow profile that develops around the cyclists give them a net advantage if the cars are at a certain distance. So as a result of that, the cycling body had to change the distance, had to extend the distance at which the cars can be when a cyclist is in front of them. So for time trialing events, that advantage gain could have major implications. And in elite athletics, these things are quite important. So this is how computer models can have a major impact in everyday life and things that we know and love, like sports.
Awesome. And in general, for in silico medicine, there is a common distinction between knowledge-based models and data-driven models, for instance, AI. But focusing on the first one, I would like to ask you, what is a knowledge-based model and how can you build one?
That's a really good question, and I think it's an important distinction to bear in mind. The more data-driven models like artificial intelligence or machine learning that require a lot of data to get trained and then make predictions. Knowledge-based models, on the other hand, start with the laws of physics or certain verified ground truths in physics and biology. So to take an example and go back to my example of the cyclist with the car behind the cyclist, to create the flow profile, maybe you'd consider the law of conservation of momentum to be the most significant. And so you try to convert that into a set of equations that'll help you predict the flow profile. When you're trying to predict how a disease mechanism may emerge in a human being, you may do the same, but your starting point would be certain hypotheses about how cells interact with each other, certain biological principles that hold in nature. So the point is with knowledge-based models that you start with certain verified principles or laws of nature. Now, how do you build one? That's a fascinating question, and that is a multifaceted question, because there are many types of knowledge-based models. So to start off, you have got your physics-based models which require, or multi-physics models which require you to understand the laws of conservation of mass, momentum, energy. And you would try to explain natural phenomenon based on that. If you're trying to build agent-based models to, let's say, explain how development happens or regeneration happens, you need to capture that via rules. And officially, these are called rules. And the rules capture how different components of a system interact with each other. So it's, again, just to summarize, it's a multifaceted question, and really it boils down to the kind of knowledge-based model that you want to develop. You take a different approach. The most common ones, the computational fluid dynamics models, for example, your starting point are the laws of physics and traditional software that are available that allow you to turn those into mathematical equations that you can then solve. And a more interesting one is, in my opinion, when you're looking at biological systems and digital twins of humans, agent-based models, where you really need to understand, how the human cells may be interacting with each other, and how that behavior then scales onto the tissue level, and so on.
I saw that you work a lot on multiscale model. So I would like to ask you, what is a multiscale model, and in which occasion or to solve which problems do you use them?
So multiscale models allow us to understand how mechanisms scale from one level to the next. For example, if you want to study a particular disease, a multiscale model will enable you to look at how gene interactions, aberrant gene interactions, lead to faulty behavior at the cell level that then leads to problematic behavior in tissue mechanics, organ system behavior, etc., etc. So multiscale modeling allows you to link processes across different scales of space and time. And I tend to use multiscale modeling to understand how asthma pathogenesis occurs at a patient-specific level. So what is it about the gene interactions in patient A versus patient B, which makes potentially one healthy and the other one not? Or if it's two different patients, what yields to a severe asthma in one versus mild moderate asthma in the other? So by integrating our knowledge in terms of what's happening at the gene level and scaling that up to how cells become impacted and how cells interact with each other, and taking that to the next level of how then tissue mechanics get altered as a result of that low-level behavior, you're able to capture how individual patients may perform and may respond to drugs.
What are some potential applications of this research?
In addition to asthma, I have, in my past life as a postdoc, looked at how certain developmental patterns emerge during early human development. So by that, I mean, how are the first decisions of human life made? So I linked interactions from the gene level to the cell level to the microenvironment level, so we could understand how gene activity was controlling the release of certain proteins, how those proteins were being diffusing in the system. And in doing so, and this spatial distribution would then go on to impact the same genes, because cells are in the same system. Trying to use that framework and tools to be able to explain what those first decision-making events look like, and how, despite a very modest gradient of certain proteins, cells are able to reproducibly and with high accuracy make certain decisions which are responsible for life. I'm really fascinated by how these different decision-making levels come together in a way that the human body can function with such regularity. And it's really when something goes awry that you begin to see things going wrong and a certain disease mechanism emerging. Yet the body's so robust and still able to kind of handle it. So these are kind of the questions that we are trying to explore in my lab.
We can all hear the great curiosity and passion you have about your work. So, is there any application or research question that is particularly fascinating or challenging that you would like to tackle in the near future?
So I'm being funded by the Royal Academy of Engineering here in the UK to develop something called the lung pharmacome. And the idea is that by capturing mechanisms across scale, so multi-scale approach, can we make patient-specific predictions? Can I take data from you, create your digital avatar, and then make predictions about how you would respond to a bunch of different therapies so we can pick the best one for you? Or in general, if you were not to respond, then maybe look for a different option, because why spend money on something and at the same time expose you to a drug that is not doing any benefit but could be potentially harmful. So really the challenge that excites me the most is to be able to create a digital twin of a human patient and be able to predict with high accuracy how they will respond to a particular therapy. And this is something I've been working on for the last 3 years now. And we are at a point where we have begun to see some very exciting results in our ability to predict patient outcomes, across multiple cohorts. And this is something that I am excited about sharing. And, while there is a long way to go in this research, our initial data definitely looks very, very exciting and encouraging.
Thank you very much, Himanshu, for sharing with us all this clear explanation, and especially your great passion. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are at the end of this episode. If you like this podcast, leave us a vote, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if there's anything you want to know about the future of digital healthcare, drop us a DM on Instagram or email us at social@vph-institute.org. Have a nice one.